Tūtahi, ka mihi atu ki a koutou katoa, ko tai mai ki tēnei wāanga kōrero, nau mai, ara mai. Kia wakarongo ki ngā mātanga nei, ara, ko Kelly, ko Wayne, mo tēnei kaupapa ara te whakakaha no te tino rangatiratanga, ne te mana mo te haki o ngai tātou ki ngā mai kai, te whakatipu kai, ngā tikanga kai. Kei a tātou, always has been, but now we're back to really reasserting it. Whānau, my name is Patina Edwards, he uri ao no Taranaki Maunga, and I'm one of the kaimahi from Aotea. It's my pleasure to be facilitating our breakout today. And I'm not going to rattle on. Let's get on with the kaupapa. This is so important. I don't want to waste a second. Let's go to our kai kōrero tuatahi. And I'm very, very humbled to introduce this wahine toa ko Kelly Marie Francis no Ngāpuhi, no Tainui wakahoki. I'd love to know your backstory, Kelly, because I love what I've read that you led a corporate life and life was just not sitting right for you. And you made some choices, and those choices have now flourished and are just contributing to so many whānau around the motu. And that, for some, that vision you had, or you may not have it initially, you'll tell us, but you took action, big action. And that inspires me, and I'm sure we'll be inspired by your kōrero now. Kei a koe.
Tēnā koe, Patina, for my introduction, and tēnā koutou katoa. Hopefully the decision on tables there was the hardest decision we all have to make today, because firstly, I'm honoured to even be in a space with all of these rangatira moa popo. And secondly, to see the list of whānau that have made it here today safely, being able to prioritise this over all of our other mahis and all of the other goals and things that we've set. It's an honour to have even these 10 minutes to be able to speak in all of your presence. So, kia kaha tō mahi Ngākai, and yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. I just want to ask, firstly, Patina, is there the slides that we have up there? Yep, cool. So just while there's a loading whānau, I want to do a quick shout out to the whānau who I have seen on our list of participants today. Te aho tūroa, te puanga mara, papatuna ki kōkiri marae, ngā kaitiaki o Ihumatao, Hapai te Hauora Compost Collective, Jessica Hutchings, of course, Toi Tangata Healthy Families, and also the honour to be able to say that I've had hands in soil with some of you across the motu as well, over in Parihaka with Urs, Kairoturua with Harina, and also in Hamilton Gardens. So just a big mihi out to all of our whānau who are here. A massive honour of mine is being here and being able to share this space. So for those of you who are hearing kōrero from me for the first time, my name is Kelly Marie Francis. E noho atu ana ki Mangere Bridge, Tāmaki Makaurau. Anei tōku pepeha, ko whiria tōku manga, ko paka tōku awa, ko hukianga whakapau karakia tōku moana, ko ngā tuki matawhaurua tōku waka, ko Ngāpuhi tuku iwi, rawa ko Tainui, ko netana rawa ko mātu tōku whānau, ko Paaka nai tōku marae, ko Ngāti korokoro rawa ko te pauka te hapū, no reira tēnā koutou katoa. I am Kelly. I grew up in South Auckland, in Manurewa, but my ancestral bones all lay in Opaluni up at Pākanai Marae in the Urupa there, as well as some new whakapapa we've learnt from my mother's father, which is connecting us down to Tainui waka. I'm here to talk about a kaupapa that I started back in 2017 called Whenua Warrior Charitable Trust, which has a vision to have an edible organic garden available and accessible to every New Zealander. Our mission is to feed the community, teach the community to feed themselves, and also empower them to feed each other. And the way that we do this is by reflecting on the solutions that our ancestors had and try to apply them to the issues that we face today. Some of the kōrero that we've had in the morning time already is speaking to the importance of soil sovereignty, speaking to the importance of getting our land back to be able to utilise those spaces to benefit the people. And I believe that the people who are here today are the ones that are going to make that happen. Whether it be that you start a marakai for yourself, your whānau, your hapu, your iwi, or you start a organisation that allows the connection of all of us to come together and create that space, kia katoa mahi. We all need to put in our abilities and put in our values together so that we can start setting a foundation for better food systems so that our next generations are able to thrive. On our next slide there, as mentioned by Papatunaka Kokiri Marae and Hineamaru and Lionel, there are a few problems being faced in South Auckland in general. So a majority of my mahi at the moment is based on a project in South Auckland that we started last May. As mentioned, though, we have been operating since 2017, but the project that we're running at the moment is relative to building 600 gardens in the back of 600 homes in South Auckland urban style. We'll go into that project a little bit more and 2 more projects after that as well that we're running so that we can have a little bit of a discussion on the urban solutions we're facing today. Some of the problems that we have been presented with, and firstly, of course, is our government food systems not being suitable for the people. So at the moment we have a bit of a duopoly with the ways that we can purchase kai, and there are people that are working towards making that a better space, but in my mind I believe that food should be free, and if we all need it to survive, then we should be able to create a system that works in. Second massive problem that we face in Māngere and South Auckland, and I'm sure across the entire country/world, is the cost of fruits and vegetables and how we have no power and no say over what that is that we're paying for. It also speaks to the lack of whakapapa to our kai as well, and the inability to understand where our kai is coming from. We also want to speak to the lack of accessibility to kai and to whenua, 2 separate problems there. Hineamaru mentioned that there's 3 KFCs, 3 McDonald's in Māngere. There's also only 3 spaces in Māngere where we can purchase fresh kai, so the availability isn't even there. And accessibility to our whenua. So just acknowledging our occupation out in Irumatau and the fight and struggle that we've had to go through since 1863 to reclaim that space and use that space to benefit the people, not to earn the money. The next issue is lack of space to grow kai at home. So one statistic that sticks in my mind with this particular statement is the fact that Kāinga Ora are proud to be taking out 2,500 3-bedroom homes in Māngere alone and replacing them with 10,000 apartment blocks. So realistically what that's meaning is they're taking away our ability to own space, to have grass, to grow gardens, to have a deck, to have multiple car park spaces to increase the equity that we have within our lifestyles. But mainly what we'll be speaking to is the fact that we have not got the space to grow kai at home. One thing that I've learned over the past 5 years with Whenua Charitable Trust as well is the lack of knowledge with planting marakai. My original journey started with the idea that I was going to go into homes and teach about maramataka and soil sovereignty, and the reality is, whānau, that we're going into these homes to teach people how to take the seedling out of the pottle. We are nowhere near being able to individually learn the levels that we are discussing today and the levels that we're hoping to achieve over the next few years. We are literally at the point of starting with the seed. And the final point that I'm hoping to discuss today is the lack of connection to community mara. So there are community mara inside our communities. They are thriving. They are gifting away food, but because of our inability to understand what free food looks like, and the ability to koha time and aroha other than koha of putia or trade of putia, that is stopping our community gardens from flourishing and from feeding more people. So those are kind of the key points of what I'll be discussing over the 3 projects that we're currently running. On our next slide, we're coming into the project that I slightly discussed earlier, which is our project Southside 600. So this is a little bit more of a kōrero on what it is that we are doing out in the community. Firstly, we were funded for 300 gardens through philanthropy funding in Foundation North, but because I am who I am and I hire staff who are who they are, we doubled that in half the time. So it's supposed to be 300 in a year. We've attempted 600 in 6 months. And the reality of that decision is based on the fact that you do 1 mātakai for 1 person and 6 other inquiries come through. So we've more than doubled the amount of gardens that are needed. And that's simply by putting 1 post out on our Facebook page and getting 720 registrations in the first 2 months. So as you can see here, our goal, build 600 gardens, back of 600 homes in South Auckland. Our mission was to register 600 community members, completely create an entirely new process from the beginning, organise suppliers of materials, which during COVID has been an incredibly huge task, but also hire the people, set up the stations of trucks, trailers, containers, getting our teams on the road, making sure our seedlings are going to survive, and also being able to pinpoint the wānanga that we have next to the garden box when we install these homes. So we turn up to your house, we get your whānau out of the house, we build the garden box, we fill it with soil and mulch, we plant it with seedlings and have that wānanga kōrero at the garden box with families. So as you can see, these 3 photos on the left-hand side here is an example of that. That is the type of solution that we're offering out to whānau at this point. We are up to about 490 and counting, so 4 are currently being built in Pukekohe as we speak. So I'm blessed that team is flourishing at the moment, and I'm able to be here with you all now and discussing this project. The continuation of our project over winter, so we plan our schedules via the Maramataka and via Matariki. So our idea of June and July is to go out and whakawhanaungatanga with our Mātakai. We've been successful in making the trip up to Waima and to also do a hauhake kumara in Waima so that we can create those connections in other spaces, learn the soils, learn the Indigenous knowledge set that is available in our communities at the moment. And we also got to go down to Rotorua as well to do a hauhake kumara there with Kai Rotorua and Harinaru Pāpera. Our plans going forward in June, July is to do our strategy planning. So Matariki is the closing of a year and reopening of the year. We want to do our strategy planning. We want to get down to Parihaka for their Puanga Kai Festival and across to the East Coast as well, so we can hopefully catch Matariki setting. The continuation of our project after winter will be that we have Project Southside 600 plus start, meaning that it will be an ongoing project that Whenua Warrior is offering to our communities for the entire of our existence. We've created a 25-year plan which will help us to keep this project running as well. And another point inside that 25-year plan is to start working on our food policies and changing a food policy once a year, so that in 25 years' time, when I'm a kuia at a kohanga reo sharing my beautiful stories from Whenua Warrior, we will have 25 policies changed. We will have thousands by that time of gardens built in the back of homes, and we'll be assisting kura kaupapa, kohanga reo, kindergartens, high schools, everyone basically. And our project, some of our project stats down the bottom in the right hand corner there, 715 registered at the time of this PowerPoint being created. It was 480 completed, 16 schools, and our completion date will be the end of this month. Moving on to our next project. So when we spoke about some of the issues we're facing in urban areas in Tāmaki, one of the issues we face is the lack of spacing. So Project Tipu Tubs was born. The initial vision of this was to supply kaipaks across the whānau, across the Auckland area, but what we found is that a lot of community groups had actually received funding of that type to do kaipaks, so we took it a little step either further or back, I suppose, into the idea of supplying an ongoing sustainable kai that whānau can start teaching themselves about, no matter the lack of access to whenua. Our mission was to register 350 families to receive the tubs. Abilities and kai preference was dependent on how much we provided in the tubs, and leaving some information behind so that they can maintain. We registered 69 different families, resulting in 401 tubs to apartments, tuku matua, and also young families as well. And you can see the percentages at the, below there. The main reason for these tipu tubs, though, is because we are facing a time where people mentally don't believe that they are gardeners. They have been told certain things in their past through the education system, through the employment system, that they are not able, and that's something that we're trying to unknot within our healing space and teach our people that this is actually what our ancestors did, and they were able to create a kai from basically anything. The continuation of this project, though, is to secure paid contracts across multiple departments that we are facing issues in, and that's including partnerships with community groups who are working with our whānaus in need. We plan to restart this in September. I'm sorry I have to move through these so quickly, whānau. I just want to try and get the best out of this 10 minutes that I possibly can. But the next project that we're looking to discuss is Project Mana Motuhake. Now, this one in particular has been a bit of a baby building type scenario for me. It's been something that's been on my mind from the very beginning, and the main reason for it is because I myself am an urban Māori who would like to move home one day. I am currently living in a small apartment block in the middle of Māngere Bridge, and if I had a standard life that required me to sell my time to make money to be able to create food, then I would struggle understanding exactly what it is that I need to know before I move home. So that on board, plus COVID level 4 in March 2020, that taught me how unsustainable I actually am. Even though I come to these spaces and talk about our food sovereignty and talk about our whenua and talk about how sustainable our food options need to be and what we are doing to build them, I realised that my lack of ability to access materials and resources to be able to build my kai was a very real thing. And with the closing of our retail outlets where I purchase seeds or where I might access 4 tonne of soil for the following season manakai, it started highlighting the fact that I need to be far more sustainable. And with that thought, if I need to be more sustainable, so does my whānau, my hapu, my iwi, and my hapori. So in came this idea here, Project Mana Motuhake. My fancy friend, Tuku Leaululu, is a Samoan architect based in South Auckland, and he designs different projects across South Auckland, and we partnered up with this idea. I got a pen and a paper and drew a little picture. He made it into these pretty pictures on the left-hand side here, and now he is currently running Samoan and Māori rangatahi in Otara to build our first prototype. What these are, whānau, is it's a seedling house that opens up where you can plant trays of seeds of your own. You can then water harvest from the roof of that seedling house into a tank, which is connected to an irrigation system going into your garden boxes. 2 garden boxes there, 1 compost bin which rotates through each season. I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but but it's a entree of information and knowledge that we need as urban Māori who would like to move home one day, because these types of styles can be put into the back of homes now. Our intention here is to create the solution for urban style housing that will teach all aspects of mahinga kai. Our mission was to design that so that we can koha 10 out to kohanga and kaupapa so that they can start practicing now. And with our first prototype due in May, we also wish to make it a retail project to create a revenue stream to keep our free gardens available to communities, which kind of completes the circle. So if we can create our own profits, then we'll be able to continue the free gardens across the country. So finally, I'm not sure how much time I've got left, but on our final page, what I wanted to do, Whānau, because I knew we were going to have to shoot through these projects really quickly, what I want to do is just highlight the fact that these are our urban solutions only. We have many, many, many projects that we are open to. We want to come and join you in. We do travel as well. We want to move around different spaces because our ancestors used to do that. Our ancestors would go between hapu and between iwi, learn those knowledges, bring them back to the hapu, and then we'd all flourish with the new set of knowledge. So we are doing that. I've put my details down here as well so that you're able to contact us, because I'm sure this is going to highlight a few things inside your wairua and you're going to want to talk further about them. So please do email, contact us on our website or our Facebook or Instagram. But to close up today, I'm going to leave us with a whakatauki, but I'm also going to leave us with a little challenge. Now, you might be someone, as mentioned before, who's a part of an organisation. You might be one person inside your marae that has this idea. You might be a solo mama of 4 who just wants to have an extra bit of silver bed in the boil-up pot. But either way, the Whenua Warrior challenge that I'm going to leave you with today is to improve the food system that controls your individual access to kai. Individual access to kai. Remove yourself as the barrier and give it a go. We all must take the responsibility where we can. Nō reire te whānau, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
We will have time for pātai at the end of our second kai kōrero, but thank you. That was so, wow, what a download. Some amazing ideas. I'm sure there's lots of whakaaro. If you have whakaaro already, e homa, please feel free to put them in the chat. Also, I'd just like to put a question to everyone here. We wanted to get everyone to have a chance to express themselves, and so we thought of some 3 simple pātai, and I'll give you the first one now, sort of thinking traffic lights. So the first question is, what needs to start happening in this area of Māori kai security for Māori to truly thrive? So you've heard some kōrero from Kelly, but you might have some inspiring ideas that are working beautifully in your area or with your organisation. I know we've got many organisations here in this breakout group, and I just want to mihi, we've had whānau ora have mentioned they are here. I know Parakori are here as well. So many doing wonderful mahi. We're going to be sharing, if you would like, to have some of your contact details shared or your project shared. Do let us know, because we will be sending out a follow-up email just to help us all get connected. So, without further ado, I'd like to bring on our second kai kōrero, Wayne Paaka, no Ngāti Porou aia. Wayne is a former Porou Māori for Kore Hiakai, the Zero Waste Collective. He is, like Kelly, a person of many different skills and talents. He had an education consultant, an IT professional, and then he spent quite a time with Kore Hiakai, which is a collective, for those who don't know, of social service organisations who work together to eliminate food insecurity in Aotearoa. And they're connected to over 300 food banks around the motu. So, and may I say proudly, Wayne's now a colleague doing some mahi with our IT solutions. Tēnā koe, Wayne. And would you like to share the screen?
That was sharing my screen here. I'm going to focus on kai sovereignty. So what we'll do is I'll start with asking the question, what is kai sovereignty? I'll start by exploring the whakapapa of food sovereignty and then transfer it into a Māori lens. So Hiakai, the Zero Hunger Collective, has created a document that is downloadable called Food Insecurity, Food Security, What is the Difference and Why Does it Matter? So I will define what Hiakai come up with. So we have temporary food insecurity, which is caused by sudden shock, such as natural disaster, for which the response is intended to be temporary. By temporary, we mean no more than 16 weeks. We have a category which is next is food insecurity. So caused by systemic change, issues including inadequate income and high cost of living. This is food-related poverty. Our responses to meet the immediate hunger experienced in this space are temporary fixes delivered by non-government organisations and community. They are dependent on donations, external funding and volunteers. Without these measures, people remain hungry. These responses create a dependency on the solutions in order to not be hungry. Food security and food sovereignty. Definition is adequate access to healthy, affordable, culturally appropriate food that allows people to self-determine what, how and when they eat. People may rely on a community network and share with whānau, but they are not dependent on the provision of kai by others to remain food secure. Just going to change screen now. Excuse me. There we go. So, first forum on food security, food sovereignty in 2007 was monumental in defining the movement and tenets. It defined the food sovereignty as people's right to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their rights to define their own food and agricultural systems. The rest of my kōrero, I will be using the term kai sovereignty instead of food sovereignty, where kai sovereignty is specific to Māori. One of the problems I saw with kai sovereignty was a disconnect from our traditional ways of collecting kai. Māori were hunter-gatherers, we fished, and when we first arrived in Aotearoa, we were coastal people, living from the sea. Our staple diet was based on kai moana. We were living near the moana, relying on kai moana. Moving forward to present-day practices, fishing has been commercialised. We have the Queen's Chain, giving the Crown the right to the beaches and waterways, decreasing our access to kai moana. There are restrictions on what we can gather and how much. Fishing is commercialised and our oceans are overfished. Rāhui that are put in place to allow our fisheries to replenish are ignored by taonga. Our fresh waters are polluted. Our fresh water is bottled and sold overseas, and there has been very little done to prevent this. Going back to pre-colonisation, our populations grew, our people adapted a slash and burn technique, which sent iwi inland where living was more sheltered from the sea breeze. When coming inland, Māori adopted to hunting and gathering food. Wildlife was plentiful, as New Zealand in pre-European context had very few predators. The land was fertile, the forests were full of animals to hunt and trap. And we move forward to the present. We look at hunting in a modern context. The recent barriers are gun licensing, which prevent people with criminal history from obtaining a license. Trapping of some breeds of birds and wildlife are made illegal. In urban areas, there are no game accessible, so hunting is restricted to rural areas. Distance becomes a time factor and a financial barrier. Commercial sales of meat have made it easier to access at the supermarket and more affordable. Access to land where hunting is plentiful is restricted and often hard to access for people living in urban areas. Traditionally, as Māori moved inland, they developed more advanced gardening processes and cultivate their own crops. They create large gardens near waterways for irrigation. They own 100% of the land and have full access to all waterways. Things are good. When we move in time post-European contact, the game starts to change. Māori who were 100% of the population, pre-European contact start to dwindle in numbers. Land acquisitions and confiscations decrease the ability to stay self-sustainable. Traditional food practices become increasingly difficult as population of Māori quickly change from majority to minority. Māori start to lose possession of their land. As the possession of the whenua decreases, then all the stats start to move in reverse. Population, language, land ownership, general Māori health statistics all start to decrease. In 1814, Māori population decreases from between 70 to 90,000. These are more disrupted both the Māori population and the settlers population increases. By 1860, just 20 years after the signing of Te Tiriti o Waitangi, the Māori population drops to 50%. In 1896, the Māori population drops to a low of about 42,000. Māori are a minority in their own lands and are, by the turn of the century, dispossessed of their own whenua. To be Kai sovereign, you must possess your own whenua. You can't feed yourself if you have no whenua to grow your food on, no land to have access to hunt, and no access to waterways, seashore to collect kaimoana. I've defined what Kai sovereignty is and how whenua is essential to maintaining Kai sovereignty. We must realise that whenua is essential. How do we attain Kai sovereignty without whenua? My experience while working for Hiakai was to network with Māori organisations and community groups. The lack of food sovereignty for Māori has been systemic. But in a practical space, we must think outside the square and focus on positive solutions. To help me think of ways to design possible solutions, I had to look at what was working in the community and what was duplicatable. The following are 3 organisations that I engaged with and were successful in the Māori and had gained momentum and had the community behind them. Main question moving into this area was without land, what do we do? And then, through networking and explaining projects based in the gardening space, I was looking for 2 things. 1, innovative ideas based in the Māori and Māori-based communities of Marae. And 2, original ways of accessing land or whenua without owning the whenua. There are several projects and initiatives happening. The following are 3 that I took personal interest in. The first was Nui Whakaorotahi Trust. Aim was to empower people and reduce poverty by working together as a community to provide healthy nutrition and develop character. The principle of whakaorotahi is a core part of ethos. We seek to work in with other community groups and provide integrated solutions to local problems. The Trust wanted to grow produce in the community, so in conjunction with Ruapehu District Council, who currently lease the land, and consulting Ngāti Haua, who are currently kaitiaki for the whenua, they sublease land to turn into marakai. We have 50 individuals gardening the whenua. Half of these are students doing a land-based training course under Kawanui Arua Charitable Trust. The next community I explored, spoke previously, which was Whenua Warrior. Whenua Warrior is an organisation with numerous projects, as you heard previously. One of the projects which interested me was Kāinga Order had initiated an idea was to create a food forest in Māngere. One of their focuses was to hire community groups based locally. Whenua Warrior was already providing tuku tubs, which were 16 to 26 litre fixed tubs full of soil, mulch and 5 different types of leafy vegetables that went into each tuku tub. We saw the graphics which Kelly Marie put in earlier. So stage 1 of this, Whenua Warrior provided houses with tuku tubs. Stage 2 of this project was to grow 1 fruit tree in the whenua for each house. And finally, stage 3 was to place 1 garden box per property. This went out to over 50 houses. Kāinga Order purchased 70 tuku tubs. Also, a collective of community groups that were based in Māngere, they made an application to access whenua to plant vegetables. The produce was gifted to the community to consume. This collective included Māngere, a local Baptist church, and was that housed Kai Koha Box and Whenua Warrior. Grace Foundation delivered support to Hiakai over COVID and the lockdown. They had leftover ingredients that weren't being used, so the produce was given out in kai packages to over 80 homes. But in Hiakai, they utilised the land to grow food for the whānau of Hiakai. The final organisation I wanted to look at was Kōkiri Tātaka Kai. This is my urban marae in Hutt Valley. Kōkiri started food bank over the first COVID lockdown. The Paaka quickly outgrew the marae and was fortunate enough to find a local Anglican church and secured use of the church during weekdays to operate out of. The Paaka wrapped social services around the Paaka and then placed a second-hand clothing store on site. From here, they decided they wanted to create a māra. They requested the use of land that the church was on, and they were granted that. They ended up growing a fruit orchard out the front of the church. At the back of the property, the local government owned land which is known as reserve land. For those of you who don't understand what reserve land is, reserve land is property which can't be built on, and it's usually government owned or local government owned. This land was requested by Kōkiri to the council if they could put a māra on it, and the council accepted that. The food from the māra was actually used in the food parcels which were given out and continues to do that today. The community were part of growing the food, and actually they were part of solving the problem they had, which was food insecurity. Some other ideas that were had and the initiatives that they had in Wainuiomata and the Pātaka Kai for Kōkiri was they had original fundraising for whakaaro. Instead of conventional fundraisers, the prize was a team would come around and create a garden for you in your property. They would plant seed leaves and educate the winner how to care for plants. It was found that the winners did not have land to put a garden in, so planter boxes were chosen as alternatives. Kōkiri were given permission on the property by St. Peter's to grow food anywhere around the property, and they've maximised that. In summary, our Kai sovereignty in modern age cannot be reliant on land ownership. Therefore, we must focus on land access, whether it is renting, accessing, asking for permission, or bartering. On the short term, we must focus on accessing land in any way we can. It is imperative for our people to be able to feed themselves without the use of whenua. This is a different path to Kai sovereignty. On the short term, medium term, the long-term goal is always to get our land back. One thing that I learned in a hui at Papa Whakiresoreso with representatives from the EU, the European Union, was scaling some of the ideas on growing our own kai. My vision was to start local, duplicate regionally, and then take it nationally. So one of the French representatives questioned me and said, "Wayne, why stop there? you have the most fertile soil in the world. So the question from the French embassy, they says, why stop there, Wayne? You have the most fertile soil in the world, a country recognised as one of the cleanest and greenest places on the planet. Why wouldn't you produce your own food and sell it internationally? You get a premium price and France would purchase it. My thinking was limited by focusing on the lack of land in Aotearoa. The German representative suggested that the techniques from produce we have onshore could be grown offshore. He suggested there may be landowners in Germany that would negotiate the use of their land. These ideas I have yet to ponder. Before I wind up, I just want to acknowledge first Terry Harrison, who actually shared Jessica Hutchins' books on Facebook during lockdown, and which I ended up reading and moving my focus into the space. I also want to recognise Hiakai, the Zero Hang Collective, and the team I work with, Chris Bull, Barb Ansley, Tammy Stroman, Jenny Sims, and of late Charitable. A special note to our Parahi, Trish Malcolm, for leading the path to helping solve the problems in the food industry. Those are my whakaaro Parahi tēnei kaupapa. Tēnei te mihi kia koutou i ngā kaumahi o Ātea. He mihi tēnei kia koutou katoa. Tēnā tātou.
Tēnā koe, me o whakaaro ko puta mai. Fantastic mahi that Kore Hiakai is doing, showing how collaboration is possible and just the impact all these beautiful kaupapa can have when they come together. We'd like to just have a very short Q&A, e Oama, and I'd like to give you 3 questions if you'd like to comment. And I see some kōrero is already in the chat. Traffic light system. Firstly, 1, what do we need to stop doing? Going red light. What do we need to stop doing? Or maybe it's government. Maybe it's the way we are feeding our tamariki. What are your whakaaro? What do we need to stop doing to really make progress at reclaiming Māori kai security? Second, green light. What do we need to start doing? And yellow light. What shall we continue doing? What's working now? So if you'd like to comment on those, we might just put, red in kōrero, green kōrero, and yellow for, it's not actually a warning button, but what shall we continue doing? A quick pātai for yourself and Kelly. I have a 17-year-old, and I'm sure many others do, have tamariki at home. What would you say to them in terms of what 3 things would you encourage, inspire me, sometimes a bit of a nut, but for that age group to start doing or learning so that they have, that opportunity to be really food secure in the next decade?
Kia ora. I love that pātai. Wayne and I actually caught up just before this and we were talking about how we can get kids more engaged in the mara, as well as how we can encourage them forcefully to consume more vegetables rather than sugars and fats and carbs. So the first thing is, like, in my mahi, we work on more of an individual basis. So we work individually with this whānau, individually with this mama, these children, and then move on to the next individual group of people. So in my case, for us to avoid colonizing spaces or recolonizing spaces, you firstly need to know that person inside and out. There'd be no point in me offering a garden box of carrots when your entire whānau are allergic and hate carrots. So the ability to connect to the person as a person and their actual needs is the most important thing, rather than going in with what you think is a solution. So in the way of babies, though, they're my favorite group to work with is our babies. Their energies are pure and true, so acknowledging their energies and utilising their energies in a way that will benefit their knowledge of Marakai is definitely a key point as well. But Wayne and I were talking about how Whenua Warrior uses certain tricks to get our kids to eat more vegetables, and one of them is actually rainbow chard. which is a coloured silver beet. And because our babies, you know, their mindsets are their mindsets, and a majority of the babies that we've worked with in the past, they identify colour on the plate as something that would be very yummy to eat. So to get those kids more engaged in the marakai, we would plant purple, pink, reds, whites, green, silver beets so that they automatically see that and think that it's going to be a yummy kai. And to encourage them in a way that we know to encourage our babies, because we were our babies and we are our tupuna. So if we connect those two sets of knowledges, and as Pākeke, if we take on that responsibility, all we need to do is watch that child, understand them in a depth that even their own parent may not understand them at that point, and then provide a space where they can flourish. That would be...
Yeah. Wayne, would you like to add to that?
One of the things I had from a teaching perspective is that I'd like to focus on tamariki because I think that's the place to start, and that was the reason me and Kelly Francis started this conversation when I said, hey, if I had rainbow-coloured women, a silver peter's kid, I would have eaten a lot more. But I looked at it from the perspective as kaitiaki. So really what we want to do is actually put gardening mara into the education system and make it fun for kids. And then those kids actually become the kaitiaki because they're going to grow up and they've got 3 generations to go through. And then what they'll be doing is they'll be passing what they learn on down to their tamariki. So it becomes integral. So part of the problem at the moment is the system is against us. So what we have to do is we have to actually reform the system to suit the needs of what we need. Yeah.
But we could spend the whole day here. And perhaps there does need to be Wānanga specifically on this topic. I just want to acknowledge how we have all come together. Although we've only had 2 of the mātanga highlighted today, there are many mātanga in this space. And what else is possible in terms of collaboration, of sharing whakaaro, of lobbying together perhaps for resourcing. And for myself, I've been thinking about, you know, with this interesting couple of years, who has kawanatanga been talking to on behalf of treaty partners with regard to high sovereignty? We even know in kawanatanga space, it's so spread out and they are quite siloed. So a quick question, how do we unsilo ourselves to be even more effective in making responses? And who knows, you know, how else we may need to be flexing ourselves. So we'll have a think about that. But e hoa, thank you so much for joining us for this breakout group. Kia kaha tātou.